The most talented person does not always get promoted. The most visible person does. And if that makes you think, but that's not me, we need to talk. So stick around. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalyst, the podcast with Shanita B. I am your host. This is where we discuss how a thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change. Today, we're covering the 3 self-advocacy skills that separate leaders who get promoted from those who get overlooked. And if you know somebody who is experiencing this very thing, share the episode with them. So here's the situation overview. You're talented, hardworking, and qualified, but somehow you keep getting passed over for opportunities. Maybe you've had a setback, or you're just the type who puts your head down and does good work. But let me tell you the problem. Good work without great advocacy is invisible work. They being your managers, they recognize that the work is getting done, but you're not talking about it. You're just quiet. You're just kind of in the corner, more like a wallflower. You're just kind of blending into the background. Believe me, you certainly don't want to be just blending into the background. I once had a mentee, and I'll call her Stacy, who was feeling pretty dejected after a missed promotion. She felt like a leave of absence had disrupted the progress that she was making, but the real issue was her inability to highlight her contributions in a tangible way. And let me tell you, I was able to help turn her light bulb on. And you are probably just like her, just like I was years ago. So believe me when I tell you that I can relate. And this affects any leader who believes their work should speak for itself and who feels uncomfortable, promoting their achievements, or you've recently faced a career setback that's shaking your confidence. All of these things tend to undermine your progress. And the stakes are pretty high because you should be pretty tired of waiting for someone to notice you. Don't wait for people to notice you. You have to call attention to yourself, and you can do this in a good way. And because if you're continuing to wait for someone to take notice, well, while you're doing that, someone else has already taken advantage of the opportunity to showcase what they're contributing. And that may not necessarily mean that their work is any better or has a higher value, but they've gotten better at communicating their value. And that's extremely important. So every day that you stay silent about your value is another day that someone else is speaking up about theirs. So just keep that in mind. So the root issue is this is not about being modest or humble. Those are virtues, and every one of us should have those. But this is about a fundamental misunderstanding of how careers actually advance. You particularly think that merit speaks for itself, and believe me, it does not. Leadership requires you to translate your merit into visible impact. Self advocacy highlights the work or the accomplishment of the person, while bragging highlights the person. Do you see the difference there? You don't want to be the bragger. You just want to call attention again to the work that you've done, and you let those who are hearing about your work make the decision as to how they will categorize that. And so here are some key data points that I want you to keep in mind. Your manager has a number of direct reports and hundreds of priorities competing for their attention. So they are not tracking everything that you're doing, nor all of your wins. Promotion promotion decisions happen in rooms that you're not in, and they're happening with information that you may not necessarily be providing to them. So if you can underscore and highlight some of the things that you have done to contribute in powerful and meaningful ways, some of those things they will be used in those decisions. Okay, and the leaders who advance are not necessarily the best, but again, they've done pretty well at figuring out how to communicate their value. And because I can think of people over the course of my career who I have encountered who, made me think, well, how did they get in this position? Because I can outthink, I can outwork, I can out blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure you can too. And this is not to say that they do not contribute anything. But when you look at the actual facts of the matter, you recognize it was not necessarily about the value of the work. Okay. So here's some critical questions for your decision tree. When is the last time that you told your boss about a specific win or accomplishment? And how about this question? How would your manager describe your impact to their boss? And then finally, what opportunities are you not pursuing because you assume you're not ready? This also reminds me, about some of the experiences that I've had. I am naturally inclined toward quietness, but not because of timidity, because I can guarantee you that no one would characterize me as timid. Um, though I would voice some of my ideas and comments in meetings and discussions, with powerful players, it was not as often as a couple of my prior leaders would have liked, and therefore it worked against me. And while I was getting things done and I was getting them done very well, I was not showcasing them. So trust and believe that I know what it's like to be in this position where you have to figure out the way to be able to showcase and discuss some of the great things that you're doing and how you're contributing to the organization and making a really good impact and doing it in a way that makes you feel comfortable. So, what kind of choices do we have? Well, I have three approaches to career advancement, and two of them will certainly guarantee stagnation. So, choice A, continue hoping that your work gets noticed. Okay, so what are the pros and cons here? I'm not even about to just go on a sideline with this. It feels humble and it avoids uncomfortable self promotion conversations. And if you frame it like that, well, you're gonna continue to remain uncomfortable. And so the con here is that it's basically going to ensure that you get overlooked while less qualified but more vocal people and maybe even less qualified colleagues advance and you don't. And so the reality here, hope is not a career strategy. So stop with the hoping. Choice B, wait for the right time to speak up. Well, this will definitely avoid risk and it certainly feels safer than asserting yourself. But the downside to this is that the right time never really comes and the opportunities pass to people who act. So while you're continuing to think, well, I'll just wait until the next time comes available. Well, there might not be a next time because that position might be moved to somebody else. And so then you have choice C. You want to master strategic self advocacy. So, what are the pros here? Well, this definitely can ensure your value is visible. It will position you for opportunities and it will build leadership presence. Okay, this is what you want. The con, and I don't really think that this is a con, but it does require you to step outside of your comfort zone and be consistent. So, for those of you who are naturally inclined toward timidity and shyness, this will definitely feel uncomfortable. But there are ways that you can do this and accomplish your very goal and get where you want to be. So the reality here is that this is how careers actually advance in the real world and you want to be a participant in the real world. You don't want to make up things in your mind and just continue down the path of, well, they should know that this is the work that I'm doing and don't they see? Well, again, people will see it and they do not mind allowing you to continue to be a workhorse, but they will call on someone else who is voicing their concerns, voicing their ideas, showcasing what it is that they're accomplishing and how they're impacting the organization and taking care of projects, and you're still being the workhorse. Hmm. Think about that. Okay, so then let me give you three self advocacy skills that I think every leader needs. Number one, own your wins. You have to document your accomplishments, and you want to do it with metrics. So if you have impacted revenue in a positive way, you want to quantify that and document it. If you have saved time on a process, document that. If you have solved some problems, indicate that. The point is that you want to document it and it doesn't have to be something that is extremely major. Oftentimes we will marginalize the good work that we do because we think that it's not important enough. Write it down anyway. Okay. And then share those wins in team meetings, in your one on ones, and in those performance reviews. And this is a thing that I think a lot of people miss because a lot of organizations require that the employee do a self assessment and the boss will do an assessment. If you have the opportunity to do a self assessment and add some comments or any type of commentary, you want to highlight some of the things that you've done. Okay, because you want that documented in your permanent record so that other leaders along the way will see, oh, they know exactly what it is that they're doing, and this is the kind of person that I want leading my team, my department, my organization. Okay, so the action here is, create those monthly wins and then document them for your manager. Even if you have meetings with them, let them know. Okay, so number two, request strategic feedback. And by strategic, you want to ask some pinpointed questions. You don't want to leave it at, well, how do you think that I'm doing? No, we want more than that. We want to know what kind of skills they think are necessary to continue to pursue promotion to the next level. Okay, be specific. And then don't just ask your boss. Ask some other sources who might be at the level where you're trying to get to, but leave the door open to understand better from their perspective what they think would be helpful. Okay? And then, you know, show some initiative and schedule some time on a regular basis. Maybe you do this quarterly. Number 3, pursue stretch opportunities. Okay, so this is one of those things that I think is important because you want to show how serious you are. You might be a leader of a small group, and maybe you're in an organization where there are many levels of leadership, or maybe you're trying to get to some of the levels of leadership. Well, you have to show that you are already capable of doing some of the work. And so this is a perfect opportunity to do that. And this will require you to do some things that are outside of your current scope. But if it will help you to get where you want to be, it'll definitely be worth it. So volunteer for a high visibility project. Volunteer to work with some cross functional teams that are doing some things that are system or organization wide that would require you to work with different departments and different teams that have different disciplines. Or just ask if you can work on an assignment or a task that is a little bit more challenging than the ones that you typically do. And don't wait to be asked. Okay. Identify some of the things that need to be done and propose solutions. I cannot tell you that as a leader, this is one of the things that I love to see in my team members when they recognize that there's an issue or a problem to be solved and they come with some ideas to resolve it. That is fantastic. And I also make sure to document things like that for my team members because I want them to excel. And so those things are extremely helpful. And then, as an action item, you can identify a stretch opportunity and then make the case for it. It shows initiative. And then I'm going to give you a bonus because I think that this is important. You want to identify the decision makers and their colleagues and make an effort to make them your allies. And you can do this by just showcasing how some of the work that you do may actually impact the work that they do or their teams. Now, of course, you have to consider the context of your particular situation to figure out how that should play out. But you can do this, okay? And that will be extremely helpful to you. So we got a 30-day implementation. And so these are some things that you can do over the next several weeks to make an impact. Okay. So in that first week, I want you to create a template to document your wins and then be sure to share the wins. Okay. Week 2, schedule some feedback conversations with your manager and at least one other key stakeholder. Now you can do two, but if for those of you who are timid, at least go for one other key stakeholder apart from your manager. And week 3, identify and propose a stretch opportunity. And you might have to enlist the assistance of your manager, but just share with them what it is that you would like to do and where it is that you're trying to get in your career. Week 4, assess the responses and adjust appropriately. Okay, so here are some indicators of success. You know that you have made some improvements and it's being noticed if your manager can articulate your specific contributions and impact. That is a good thing. Here's another thing that you can look for. You realize that you're being considered for stretch opportunities and development opportunities. That can be a total game changer for you. And then you feel confident discussing your achievements and your career goals. This is something that you should not shy away from. Again, this is not bragging. This is you showing how you're contributing not only to your team, but to your department and to the organization as a whole. Uh, it is so important in organizations that as leaders that we let people know how important their role is to the greater organization. It's not simply the high titles, the people with the high titles who make the most impact. It is the people who are um, sometimes down in the weeds who are getting the work done. And if your goal is to sharpen your skill set as a leader, you want to highlight that for your team. And if you're trying to get into leadership, well, then you certainly want to be comfortable and confident in discussing some of the things that you're achieving, because again, that is a great contribution to the organization. So here's our executive summary. The bottom line is this: your career advancement is exactly up to you. It is your responsibility and not anyone else's. And self advocacy is not self promotion. It's actually a way that you can demonstrate leadership by underscoring and highlighting the things that you recognize are important, not only to leadership, but to the organization. And I would say that the risk level for this is extremely high because every day that you remain invisible is another day that someone else becomes more visible. Because again, everybody else is not stopping because you're not talking about your skills and what you've done and contributed. They're going to be showcasing what they're trying to do because they have goals and objectives that they want to meet. And so some people are better at doing this. You're going to have to learn to be comfortable. So your decision timeline is this week. You have to start doing this immediately, ASAP. Okay. So we've reached the end of today's episode. So what I want you to do is go ahead and download your 4C decision tree so that you can work through your specific challenge. And remember, being good at your job is par for the course. Being good at communicating your value, now that's what separates leaders from the high performing workhorses. You cannot afford to not take action because this can set you back considerably if you do not take action. Okay? So thanks for joining me today for this episode of Crossroads and Catalysts. And I certainly trust that this helped you. So be sure to rate the show and leave a review. And don't forget to share it with someone else who is at a crossroads. Also, if you have a story that you would like to share or a crossroads that you're navigating and you would like to discuss it with me, I would certainly love to hear from you. So send an email to me at connect@crossroadsandcatalyst.com. I will also leave a link to that in the show notes. So remember, crossroads reveal who you are, catalysts shape who you become. Every decision matters, so make it count. See you next week for your next executive brief.